Okay, one of the first things I'm going to try to do is hone the cylinders here. Got a little honing bit, and I'm just going to try to hone this. I'm just adding more pressure to the stone. A really nice job smoothing out those cylinder walls and removing debris. So keep doing this for a little while until I get all of them. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I've got 10 holes to do on this. So okay, so here's before the hone. After the hone. Like, so there's some deep grooves in there that I can't really get to it. Maybe if I work it a little longer and get it out, but it is way better than it was before, so. Alright, I got a little aggressive on that because I found a couple of pockets of sand and rust that hadn't been drained out after coming back from powder coaters. So they must have been sandblasted and got caught, and I noticed it was starting to flow out when I was cleaning it. So I put the hose in there and it started to pour out, so there was a ton of sand in there. So anyhow, all clean, but to dry. I wanted to really get the paper towels into the areas with bare metal, get that dry so it doesn't start rusting, because that can happen very quickly. And I'm going to do the tractor one, and we're going to start assembling that and get all the pieces back on it. Thing I want to point out when cleaning these is that there's a little channel in here that it's kind of like a extra grease reservoir that gets in here and then works its way out. This one was, when I first got to it, was solid all the way across, and it wasn't until I started digging that I found this channel was filled with dry dirt, which really prevents the grease from flowing correctly. And also, it can grind up in there and kind of really destroy your bushings and your pins. So you really want to get this clean 100% before you put the new pins back in and grease it up. So you know, it's pretty much in all of these big joints like this. So you'll see even, you know, these down here have the center part. So I'm going through and cleaning those up really good before I put everything back together. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put these assemblies back together. I've got my parts diagrams and I've got all my parts roughly laid out for these, so I'm just going to verify the assembly and what part goes where and put these back together. Here we go. So it looks like this is the wrong one for that one. For this one, they're not the same part. They are opposite of each other. So you need to make sure you get them correctly and orient this correctly, because the way that it locks in. Now I've got new washers, and I think I'm going to use those just because they're going to be more slippery. They are, I believe they're like galvanized or stainless washer. I bought them new from Cat. And you'll see the difference between the two, especially if I bring them up, and you can see that this has it's kind of a rough texture that we got on purpose to hide a lot of stuff, but might not let things slide as well as this will. So, and the purpose of these is to allow the springs to slide. So I'm probably gonna, so I am gonna use these. So let's lay those out. So I'm gonna get some grease in here because these are the rub points inside of here. So now I've got the inside. I'm gonna grease the bottom of this pin a little bit. Maybe persuade it to go in. I'm gonna try to just hammer it a little. There we go. And that pin is in. Okay, and one thing you want to lube the top of this washer and right underneath of it so all these parts can float on each other. And just paint these top surfaces. I know these are going to be the wear surfaces. This is going to be harder. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this yet. So the problem is I need to force this into there. And this spring is going to be under a lot of tension. So somehow I have to find a way to compress this spring safely and get it onto that. Almost worked, except it slid off to the side. Okay, made this weird Frankenstein of a mess. Used an oil wrench actually to help compress it, and then put zip ties on until I think I'm where I need to be. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to reassemble this. One thing to note, these definitely have a side that have been more compressed than the other, I think to help you start it, so use that. Go in here and just get it started. Okay, now I'm going to oil it. We're gonna get this on here. Go. That's in. One. Yay. Can you help?
So here what I'm doing is squeezing grease into the existing zirc fittings. And what I found is that through the process of sandblasting it, some has kind of gotten into these channels. So I just want to make sure I get all of that cleared out of here really good. So I'm just squeezing this out till all I see is grease. Now the next thing I want to do before I get these pins installed is grease these walls by hand. So I'm just kind of applying grease to my finger and really making sure I get that all over the surfaces. One thing I noticed when I was taking this apart is the previous person or the previous owner didn't really do a good job greasing these pins. Ideally, you always have grease on these pins. They're never bare metal. And I found some of these completely dry, which is absolute no-no. That's the biggest way to wear these bushings out very quickly. So that's one of the reasons why I did such a good job cleaning everything, trying to get the pits, everything sandblasted, and then cleaned very thoroughly to make sure that the deep rust was gone and that these surfaces were now as slick as possible. So now that I've done a test fit of these pins, I'm gonna grease up these pins manually and then slide it in. And that'll just make sure that all of the bare metal is covered before I slide the pins back into the slot. So the next thing I'm going to put back on is the bucket tilt sensor. And what that does is tell the machine where the bucket position is. And on machines like this, when you raise and lower the bucket tilts slightly, depending on where you are. So if you're way at the top, it may be tilted at an extreme angle versus when you're down at the bottom. So this is particularly noticeable if you have forks on this and you're trying to lift something like you would with a forklift. It will tilt kind of uncontrollably and you have to kind of manage that by yourself with the controls unless you turn on this feature. And so it will automatically keep the bucket level. So that really helps with some of these mundane tasks, especially if you're loading things with the forks on and off of something repeatedly. This really helps make sure that you don't accidentally dump your load or tilt it too far. So this is a really cool feature that I liked about this unit. Now, unfortunately, it looks like the washers that I sent to powder coating didn't come back with it, and I didn't notice it till now. So I just found some other washers that I had. They're not as pretty as the powder coated ones, but oh well. So the next thing I'm going to put on is these cover plates. And these help prevent dirt from getting in the pivoting mechanism. I really recommend a dolly for this type of operation. It really helps to just be able to spin it around, not have to keep getting up and down. So one thing you'll notice that these are a different finish, and that's because I forgot to get these in the original powder coating order. And my friend was having something powder coated, so I was able to throw it into his batch for no extra charge. So one last thing I need to do before I get this coupler on the tractor is clean the pins up. Now I did this once before it went to powder coaters, but just sitting in my garage, they've already started to rust up because it's bare metal. So I'm just going to take a little bit of steel wool, clean the outside of these the best I can, get them nice and smooth again. One thing I almost forgot is cleaning the inside out. So I needed to reinstall the zirc fittings, squeeze some grease through there, make sure I get all of the sandblast and sand out of there. And then I'm going to coat the outside of these entirely with grease and make sure I get all of the bare metal covered before I reinstall them. So this is the moment that I've been waiting for, and that is getting this rebuilt coupler mated to the tractor. I quickly realized that this was not going to be a one-person task, so I had to get my wife to run the controls. You'll see what happens here. I end up getting the bottom pin aligned, and I need to tilt the top hydraulically to get it to line up with the pins. It took a little bit of doing, but it wasn't nearly as hard as it looked. So a couple of quick notes on this process. So unfortunately, something that I didn't capture because my phone battery died is that I installed these pins backwards initially, so I had to swap them. The top pin and the bottom pin are actually a little bit different from one another. One is a little bit longer and fits a little further in a bushing. They're still the same diameter, so they both slide into the same slot, so that's why it was hard for me to tell until I started to look at the clearances on the back and noticed that one didn't go all the way into the bushing like it should. One thing I had to do is either apply or release pressure on the hydraulics in order to get these pins in and out easily. Otherwise, they were stuck pretty hard in there.
Okay, now it's time to put some bling back on this thing, so we're going to put this cover back on. And something that I did, I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. I actually welded this top in and then grinded it all out. So I've done the same here, but it turned out really nice there. So, see a weld bead. So this leads right here.
So this is going to wrap it up for part 1 of rebuilding the front coupler. Stay tuned for part 2 where we'll reinstall the electric actuator and button up the rest of these components. Thanks again for watching, and please remember to subscribe.
You need to get this side down a little bit.
Put the damn thing in.
Well,
Yeah, it's like it's heavy. What are you doing?